What's up guys, Houndish here, and today we're jumping back into Destiny 2 with plenty of news and updates to discuss, so we'll touch on some updates for this week, as well as some of the new content, but then we've got some pretty huge story developments, and Savathun has been very close to home for quite some time, even infiltrating our own tower, so we'll talk about newly revealed story stuff, but into the future, the tower could see 2 major characters arrive, and it also looks like some will go away, so we'll discuss all of that, as well as new event details, updates to old raid gear, and Bungie outline how gear is going to appear in-game with sunsetting. And then we've got teasers for September content, fixes coming in the July update next week, season feedback, exclusive bounty drops, and more to discuss in the videos. So if you guys do enjoy this one, a rating below really does help me out, but otherwise, let's get into it. Of course, we have had the weekly reset, we've got the return of the Iron Banner, but then a slightly quieter week with the content associated with Season of Arrivals. This week's Means to an End quest requires Guardian kills or enemies killed in Nightmare Hunts. We opted for the Nightmare Hunts, it takes just a couple of runs, and then the main interference mission this week is a rerun of a previous mission with new lore, although it does give the opportunity to check out all of Eris's dialogue so far, which I'll round up at the end of the video. But it's curious that we're seeing repeats in the interference mission, because we know there are still more versions undiscovered, so JB3 had shared one with the Pyramid Room, and then another with the Court of Oryx, and finally an area which houses Nokris, Savathun's supplicant, who it appears will have to fight during an upcoming mission. Although this week there have been some pretty big story developments, and one of them we did touch on very loosely a couple of weeks ago, but my buddy Nemplays on Twitter did share some really cool dialogue between Eris and the Drifter that takes place inside of the Prophecy Dungeon, which warns that Savathun's influence has even infiltrated the tower, so check this out.
Shax says you sang him a little ditty.
What?
Shax, Chunky Titan, One Horn. Did you sing him a song on the moon?
What a senseless question. Does that oaf still keep that skull with him?
In the tower? Yeah, hangs it over his spot. I wouldn't have tangled with that thing.
Desperate times. Did it go?
That would be the one.
It's a viral chant. It can never be unheard. Now that Savathun has announced herself, relics of the dark across the system have begun to awaken. Tell Shax to remove that skull immediately.
Sister, I already tried.
What did that oaf say?
No.
And so there it is, confirmed. Lord Shax when he sings the song about the moon being made of cheese with the Shadowkeep theme tune, which is something that he did during the Twilight Gap mission for the Devil's Ruin quest. He's actually humming a tune that he shouldn't know, and according to Eris, that is the Song of Savathun. And various relics, including, apparently, the giant skull above Shax, and especially those associated with Ahamkara, have started to awaken with the arrival of Savathun. And so essentially, that relic above Shax in the tower seems to have had an influence on him, and who knows what that has enabled Savathun to actually see and do inside of the tower, right? It's also curious that Drifter suggests that he's tried to get Shax to remove the skull, but Shax is incredibly reluctant to do so. Definitely very creepy stuff, and I do wonder if a confrontation between Eris the Drifter and Shax is going to take place at some point in the future. Be sure to give us your thoughts about that. Just a random thing here that could be associated. JB3 shared an image, which originally I believe was shared on a Raid Secrets Discord, but no one quite seems to know the source of the image. JB3 refers to it as Savathun, but we're going to have to wait and see with this one. It could potentially be a leak of an enemy that we're going to see either this season or next. Could be Savathun or someone associated with Savathun, but as many people have said, we don't have a reliable source, we don't really know where it's come from, so there's potential that it might not even be real, but I just wanted to point that out right there. Of course though, when the darkness begins to arrive on a fuller scale, appearing on Titan and Mars, a lot of stuff is going to kick off, and we've seen from the season trailer that Eris will seek Zavala's counsel shortly, and obviously she's going to warn of this newer direct threat from Savathun, and this could potentially serve as the starting point for the evacuation quest that we know about, so that'll be a series of quests and steps where we need to evacuate the locations coming under attack. Via newly spotted dialogue associated with that quest, we get some really telling info, and so spoiler alerts are totally necessary here. And we start with pretty big news about Anna Bray and Rasputin. So, closing out the Mars evacuation, where we'll help to salvage parts of Rasputin during the attack, Anna Bray says, "I have to do some brain surgery with a soldering iron," and it describes her holding on to chunks of metal. And she goes on to say there wasn't as much left as I had hoped, a fraction of a percent, but it's him. And she carefully lifts the frame. He's light. And then she says, "Are you in there, Red?" And the screen flickers a soft orange, And then Anna says, let Zavala know I'll bring Rasputin to the tower, and whatever happens next, we'll face it together. This is really curious because it confirms that Anna will be coming to the tower following the escape from Mars, and so she could be a new tower vendor in the future. There is also the remaining question of the Hunter Vanguard position, but separately and equally huge, one of the lore books teased an experimental exoframe in Anna's possession as she escapes Mars. And we'd previously discussed the possibility of a walking, talking version or frame version of Rasputin, but this dialogue pretty much confirms it. She has the head of this unit cracked open as she attempts to solder pieces together, and she states that there isn't as much left as she hoped for, but Rasputin is indeed inside of the frame. And she goes on to say that she's returning Rasputin to the last city. So this is pretty insane, guys. Rasputin is going to live on. But not only that, we could potentially see Rasputin permanently positioned in the tower in some way in the future. Definitely let us know what you think about that one, but the fate of other planetary vendors appears like it's going to be somewhat different. So at the end of the evacuation on Io, we speak to Asher, and he says, if the darkness claims the Pyramidion, I will dissect it for study, unfold its innumerable dimensions, wade through its multitudinous seas radiozoic, peer through its crackling warp gates leading toward a millions of new realities. But he finishes by saying if something steps out of that ship and descends down the pulsing electric corridors of the Pyramidion through the infinite swirling Cantor dust of its interior, they will find me at its heart on the shores of my Radiolarian lake, and I will be ready for them. And so Asher, actually it appears, is going to stay behind with the Pyramidion. And if any of the darkness want to try and mess with what he's got in there, well, he's certainly going to put up a fight. But for Brother Vance on Mercury, he says, I regret that I cannot join you in the city. I met Osiris once, and he told me, among other things, the sacred tones came from the lighthouse. The words are my own, not the tale of Osiris. My song is not one of worship, but one of hope, shining brightly in the dark. I will walk into the infinite forest and spread hope, Guardian, hope for the future. And so Brother Vance is actually going to disappear off into the infinite forest. But then finally for Sloane on Titan, she essentially wants to continue her duties as always. So with the gaze of the pyramid above, she's still working on perfecting her armor. But she goes on to say, when that ship decides to land, I'll be here to deal with whatever walks out of it. When it all started, me, Zavala, and Shax, we didn't build the wall. We were the wall. I told Zavala once, I was there for the beginning, and I'll be there for the end. It's not the end yet. And so for the moment, Sloane is being this stubborn Titan, and it would appear that she'd rather go down with Titan than to flee and not put up a fight. Or at least that's what she's saying for the moment. And so that gives us a bit of an insight into what's going to happen with those planetary vendors. Obviously the Anna Bray and Rasputin thing is certainly one of the very exciting sounding threads at the moment, but we'll see how that story develops. Once again, all of that's going to be linked to the evacuation quests. However, it doesn't seem super likely that that's going to happen in the next week or so, because next week appears to have a pretty busy reset anyway. So firstly, Ruinous Effigy, the new exotic trace rifle, appears to be relatively likely to drop next week on the reset, or at least the quest for it will begin, as the ornament does currently have a scheduled listing in the Eververse inventory for next Tuesday. And so we probably will get a new exotic quest there, but also we have Moments of Triumph dropping next week as well. And the 2020 seal does have objectives to reach Valor Rank Legend inside of Season 11, depositing motes, defeating combatants with precision final blows in Gambit, completing all of the Moon's Lost sectors, the Garden of Salvation, the final phase of Altars of Sorrow, and then we've got Pit of Heresy and Prophecy completions, finding and destroying all of Savathun's eyes, and then finally, defeating Savathun's mysterious supplicant in the mission Interference. And that's the one that we guess is probably going to be Nokris. On top of this though, there are probably equally as many classified objectives that currently can't be seen, and so definitely appears that we'll have quite a few different things we need to get done to pick that title up. On top of this, next Tuesday is going to be Bungie Day, which is typically a day where they announce some stuff, or have cool community objectives, new content and things like that, and obviously it is going to be a pretty busy reset, so that kind of works in itself. But it's worth bearing in mind because there could be a couple of additional surprises in there. Let us know any thoughts you have about the upcoming content that we know about for this season. Moving on though, we get an update from Bungie on sunsetting, and specifically some new info about armor, displaying sunset in-game, and Reprise gear. And so initially, they've said that legendary gear watermarks connected to the season or expansion they were introduced in will be updated to reflect when that gear can and can't reach a season's max power level. And that's why vanilla gear from Destiny 2 now has the Red Legion icon on it. But actually they show us that gear is going to have a kind of grayed out icon when it isn't able to reach max power. So just using a Forsaken piece as an example, they say when the legendary gear is able to reach a season's max power level, the watermark will be white with a dark shade behind it. So that's what we can see on the top. However, when legendary gear can't reach a season's max power, the watermark will be black with a light shade behind it, which is what we can see at the bottom. So at the very least in the UI, there'll be a way to quickly identify what's what. And in this article, they do have a list of when particular pieces of gear are going to sunset in the future. But there's something pretty interesting here. They say that legendary gear from Last Wish and Garden of Salvation raids will drop and retroactively update to Season 11 watermark with a Season 14 power cap. But they go on to say that legendary armor from the following raids will drop and retroactively update to the Season 11 watermark with the Season 14 power cap. And that'll include Leviathan, Eater of Worlds, Spire of Stars, Scourge, and Crown of Sorrow. Of course, we can get the original versions of those raid pieces at the moment, but I don't believe they are currently dropping updated versions. It's interesting because in the database we've got Helm of the Emperor's Champion. This is just an example. Basically all of those armor pieces they list are in the database as 2.0. But yes, based on what the Help article is saying, if you want Leviathan Prestige armor as 2.0 and not power capping until Season 14, it is going to be possible at some point in the near future. Once again, I'll link the article about sunsetting down below. But here, let's get into some final goings on and roundups. Once again, Lance Reddick has been teasing that he's recording more dialogue for Zavala. And of course, with them working from home, Lance is actually using his closet for voiceovers at the moment, and it can work actually really well for recording. But I'm definitely going to get a little bit of pleasure from the fact that when I hear some epic voice line from Zavala in Beyond Light, something crazy is happening on Europa, I'm just going to remember, man, that dude was standing in a closet when he said that. Somebody pointed out that the new Ikelos weapons don't progress the sleeper catalyst, and DMG said that they're going to be fixing that one soon, so that probably is something that's dropping in the July update. And there's been a lot of conversation about catalysts in general. Somebody said when Season 12 drops and destinations get vaulted, please don't take a year to change catalyst acquirement methods. And so DMG said, we'll see if we can get some info out in the next few weeks. A few things are still in the planning stages, but I'll check with the team. And of course, taking destinations away affects a hell of a lot of quests and objectives, drops and things like that, so Bungie will have a lot of updates to the game that they need to make, just in terms of the raw quality of life. They also asked players to drop a top 5 catalysts that you'd love to see finally updated into the game. So you can definitely push that feedback to Bungie if you like. I'm curious to see how many new catalysts we'll get with the September drop. But players are also asking for more information about transmog before Season 12, and DMG once again said, I don't know if I can promise every exact detail, but the goal is definitely to get more info to you before Season 12. Although it's worth remembering that Bungie had said that the transmog feature is something that will probably arrive later in Year 4, not immediately with the launch in September. I'm definitely curious to see what the parameters of that are going to be and what we'll actually be able to do with it, right? That's kind of the primary question, just how much will we be able to do with it? Community managers have said numerous times recently that they're also pushing feedback about sunsetting and various concerns that players have to the development team. And definitely sunsetting is a very divisive issue. And I'd say on the most part, from kind of what I'm seeing, a significant number of invested players definitely aren't happy with the idea of sunsetting, right? I don't think it's the case that just a few people are kind of complaining about it. Definitely, there are a lot of opinions about it. So I guess really we just gotta keep pushing that feedback to Bungie, and hopefully they're going to give us details about how sunsetting will actually work, or any kind of adjustments they can make based on the concerns of players. I'm not sure if that's potentially going to happen, but there's a lot of conversation incoming over the next few weeks. So once again, share your thoughts about that down below. But another final shout right here if you watch a lot of Destiny on Twitch. There's a new exclusive emblem and shader that you can get by gifting 2 subs to streamers using the Destiny 2 extension on Twitch and who are actively streaming the game. So of course you'll need to link your Destiny and Twitch account. Jaime right here shared what the rewards actually look like. And also Glad and a couple of other folks have posted kind of guides to precisely how it works, because this whole thing came out but Bungie haven't really posted an update on what you're supposed to do. Although it isn't particularly complicated. And it's something you can check out if you're watching a lot of streams. But guys, for today, that is everything that we have to round up in the video. So I hope you've enjoyed this one as always. Give us any thoughts you have about what we've touched on. But if you've enjoyed the video, a like rating down below really does help me out. And also if you're new to the channel, feel free to get subscribed so I can keep you posted with the world of Destiny 2. But otherwise, for now, whatever you get up to, I hope you have an awesome day.